President Trump issued a not terribly veiled threat to former FBI Director James B. Comey in a tweet Friday morning. James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. For a guy who has spent the past week being compared to Richard Nixon for firing a man who was investigating his campaign, it was an odd threat to level. Nixon, of course, was undone in part by the things that he recorded himself saying in the Oval Office. Which raises an interesting question: do presidents still record those conversations? Does Trump? At Friday's daily press briefing, Press Secretary Sean Spicer said that the president had nothing further to add beyond the tweet, hardly a denial. But there are other reasons to believe that the answer to those questions is yes. Nixon didn't start the tradition of recording conversations in the Oval Office. That honor belongs to President Franklin Roosevelt, according to a detailed history from the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Roosevelt's system included a microphone hidden in a lamp that connected to a recording device in the basement under the office. He used it to record news briefings, after an incident in which he felt the New York Times misquoted him. President Dwight D. Eisenhower had a recording system, too, activated by a button that would turn on a microphone hidden in a fake telephone he kept on his desk. The Post wrote about Eisenhower's recordings 2 decades ago, noting that the conversations he chose to tape didn't seem to have any consistent theme. When John Kennedy took office in 1961, he increased the number of recording devices, according to the IEEE history, adding microphones behind the curtains in the Cabinet Room and in the White House study. Lyndon Johnson focused on recording telephone calls, include one infamous call in which he ordered some new pants. Johnson apparently also asked for daily transcriptions of his conversations that he reviewed. He also increased the number of microphones in the Cabinet Room, having a number of microphones installed under the table in the room. Which brings us to Nixon. The Nixon Library details the setup he relied on: 7 microphones in the Oval Office, 2 in the Cabinet Room, 4 in his office in the Executive Office Building, and a recording system at Camp David. Few White House employees knew that the system was in place until, of course, the existence of the taped conversations rose to national attention in July 1973 when a staffer revealed their existence to the Senate committee investigating the Watergate break-in. Historian Michael Beschloss notes that this was supposed to be the end of surreptitious recording. Presidents are supposed to have stopped routinely taping visitors without their knowledge when Nixon's taping system was revealed in 1973. In 2012, journalist Mark Bowden gave a talk at the Pritzker Military Museum in Chicago about his new book, The Finish: The Killing of Osama bin Laden. As part of the research for that book, Bowden spent 90 minutes interviewing President Barack Obama in the Oval Office. The interview went well, until it didn't. Bowden. As I stood up to say goodbye to the president, I looked down and my tape recorder had died. That thing had always worked like a charm, but there it was, just as dead as a nut on the table. So I said my goodbyes, and as I was walking out of the Oval Office with Ben Rhodes, I said, "Ben, you're not going to believe this, but my recorder died in the middle of that somewhere." "Ah, don't worry about it," he says, "we record everything in here. We'll get you a transcript before you leave." And he did. That anecdote speaks volumes about the subject at hand, a recorded, transcribed conversation that was conducted without the subject knowing. Journalist Yashar Ali reported Friday morning that, according to a source within the Secret Service, the ability to record conversations in the Oval Office still exists. It's important to note that, if it does, there's good reason to think that Trump would embrace its use. BuzzFeed has reported several times on alleged use of recording devices by Trump at his homes and properties. In October last year, reporter Aram Roston wrote that 2 Trump golf clubs had pervasive monitoring systems that were tracked constantly, citing sources who worked at the facilities. Previously, Roston had reported that Trump had the ability to listen to any conversation taking place on the phone lines at Mar-a-Lago, again according to employees at the resort. The New York Times' Maggie Haberman tweeted Friday that her reporting indicated that Trump Tower employees were concerned that their offices were bugged. Trump staffers have made threats to expose recordings similar to Trump's. Social media director Dan Scavino tweeted this week that he had Hunter Biden's election night concession call recorded and that he would soon share it. More to the point, communications staff Omarosa Manigault upended a dispute with reporter April Ryan in February by claiming to have a recording of an altercation between the two steps from the Oval Office. Where did the recording come from? The encounter was recorded by an unidentified White House media employee, according to Manigault, who said the tape backs up her claim that Ryan's account is false, Paul Fahey reported. He added. Manigault, who earned a villainous reputation while a contestant on Trump's reality shows The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice, asserted that White House media staff regularly records interviews between reporters and officials. "We do it all the time," she said. "When you come into, you're on the record." An automated recording system would certainly do the trick in that regard. So we know that the Oval Office, and other parts of the White House, have had recording devices in the past. We know it's likely that those existed at least into Obama's administration. We know that a Trump advisor claimed to have a recording of a conversation that took place near the Oval Office. We know that Trump has, in the past, allegedly embraced the use of surveillance tools. Put together? It seems likely he has Comey on tape. For his part, the former FBI director doesn't seem to be too worried about their being released. President Trump suggested on Twitter Friday morning there might be recordings of his private conversations with former FBI Director James Comey, whom he fired earlier this week, in an apparent attempt to caution Comey against leaking to the press. At the White House briefing in the afternoon, Press Secretary Sean Spicer refused multiple times to confirm or deny whether or not there was a secret recording device in the Oval Office. "I've talked to the president, and the president has nothing further to add on that," Spicer said, adding his oft-used statement that the tweet speaks for itself. Asked whether the White House has a recording of Comey's conversations with the president, Spicer said, "I am not aware of that." Trump seemed to be responding to news stories coming out since the Tuesday firing, which have contradicted the White House's version of the events surrounding Comey's dismissal. Trump himself said he was going to fire Comey regardless of the Justice Department's recommendation, even though White House staff and even Vice President Pence had pointed to the recommendation from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and Attorney General Jeff Sessions earlier in the week. Multiple outlets have reported that Trump asked Comey for his loyalty at a private dinner in January but that the then FBI director declined to make that pledge. Spicer denied that Trump had asked Comey to pledge his loyalty during that dinner. On MSNBC Friday afternoon, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper told Andrea Mitchell that Comey told him he was having dinner at the White House that evening, and that he was uneasy over the invitation from Trump. It's unclear whether the tapes Trump alluded to in his tweet would be audio or video recordings, or whether they exist at all. As the Washington Post pointed out, the president used a similar construction in his wiretapping accusations against former President Barack Obama. Soon after Trump's tweets, Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi, DL, requested that White House counsel Donald McGahn turn over any recordings of the president's conversations with Comey to the House Oversight Committee. Krishnamoorthi also asked for any recording of Trump's Wednesday meeting with Russian officials, and any conversations regarding the hiring or firing former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. These White House tapes could accelerate current investigations as previous tapes have aided past inquiries, Krishnamoorthi said in a statement. House Intelligence Committee Ranking Member Adam Schiff, Democrat California, also issued a blistering statement on Trump's tweets, calling on the president to immediately provide any such recordings to Congress or admit, once again, to have made a deliberately misleading, and in this case threatening, statement. In his Friday morning tweet storm, The president also suggested that his administration could do away with briefings for the press, and instead give out written statements.